please. If I have your attention, please. My name is Mark Lopez. I serve as the Senior Advisor to Congressman Frank Mrvan. I would like to welcome you to attending the Michigan City Community Forum hosted by Congressman Frank Mrvan. Before we begin, out of respect for those in attendance, we make sure our electronic devices are turned to vibrate or silent so as not to prove to be a distraction to those in attendance with us here this morning. The Congressman will begin the town forum by discussing issues and updating on the most recent session of Congress and activities as we begin the second session of Congress. Because this is a government event, I would ask that we please, those that can, rise, those that can't, we understand, but say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Congressman Mrvan will, again, after his remarks, will take questions from the audience, starting first with those in the cards that will offer to you as you enter the room. He is entering his second term, or he's in his second term of Congress. He serves on the Committee of Education and Workforce, serves on the Committee of Veterans Affairs, and has the pleasure of being the Vice Chairman of the Congressional Steel Caucus. But at this time, I'd like to welcome and introduce Mayor Angie Nelson-Deitch to do another introduction, or a formal introduction to the Congressman, and welcome us to her great city of Michigan City, Indiana.
Good morning. So this isn't on. So I'll use my outdoor voice. So good morning and welcome to our open house or our forum with Congressman Frank Mrvan. It's been an interesting 2 weeks of storms, but I'm glad there's no snowstorm this Friday. So this is, we got a break this week. So thank you for coming out. It's very important that we hear from our congressman and that we understand what he's doing, but also for you to provide questions on what you believe our needs are here in the community. And since this is a government forum, this is not only about Michigan City, but it's about the region here, the greater Michigan City, LaPorte County area. I see we have our state representative, Patricia Boyd, here in the audience. We have Council President Don Privilinski in the audience. Just wanted to make sure. I'm honored to introduce him, talking about the American Rescue Plan money that Michigan City has received. Again, he's a part of the Workforce Committee in Congress, and we are actually have on our City Council agenda a workforce initiative for $500,000 that we're embarking on for internships and to make sure we retain our employees and make sure that they're trained and developed. So again, I would like to introduce to you our Congressman Frank Mrvan, who is a friend of Michigan City.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I want to thank Mayor Angie for that wonderful introduction. Some start their jobs by baptism of fire. She has been baptized by snowstorms and blizzards, but it is a true test to hit the ground running, and so we're very appreciative of that. Also the other elected officials and all of you who have taken time to come here today to learn about what we're doing in Congress, but more importantly to make me a stronger member of Congress so that I know and stay connected to my constituency. I of course want to give you an update of where we are and what is currently going on in Washington, D.C. And I believe that these forums, as I mentioned, are a strengthening and a opportunity to be able to learn and to be able to grow and be able to unite. So we're here today to be able to talk about a lot of issues. I want to thank you. And I also want to let you know that we have taken questions on the cards, and if time allows, then we will absolutely take questions from the floor. First, I want to talk to you about, give you an update of where we are with appropriations. That is one of the fundamental objectives of Congress. And with appropriations as we meet today, I am frustrated, deeply frustrated, that we have kicked the can down the road and have been unable to be able to pass our appropriations or fund government. Now what that means, as we have done that for over the last 4 months, is that we have continued to have continuing resolutions. Those continuing resolutions give uncertainty to federal agencies. They give uncertainty to the Department of Defense, they give uncertainty to our national security, and they give uncertainty to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these things that affect all of us each and every day, and the countless departments, veteran affairs, the IRS, things that need to be operating and have operating budgets. We have consistently, because of frustrating moments of dysfunction, have not been able to pass our appropriation bills. And that affects our national security. On the national security front, I am very concerned about the continuing resolution for not providing the direction and the adequate oversight of the Department of Defense, our intelligence agencies, and also has a direct impact on our ability of our service members to obtain the equipment they need to conduct their missions to the best of their ability. Many of us in this room are aware, as I assume may be additional questions later, there are also active military conflicts throughout the world. And as we are occurring through involving with Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, which are direct threats to the viability of democracy, I remain very concerned about the conflict that is occurring between Israel and the terrorist organization Hamas, and what that means to the region. And so that all goes towards making sure the funding and the appropriations get to the Department of Defense and National Security so we can prioritize those things. There's a supplemental piece of legislation. In addition, I feel frustrated that we have not passed appropriation measures, but we have also neglected the administration's emergency supplemental funding request, which has requested over 3 months, to include funding for the necessary for Ukraine against the murderous occurrence of what's going on in Ukraine and the threat of democracy in Europe, and also an ally of Israel and humanitarian aid. It also includes emergency funds to protect our southern border, such as hiring an additional 1,300 patrol border agents. I am extremely frustrated that we have not been able to find common ground that is necessary to complete this work to protect our national security. And I assure you that I am working every day to find like-minded colleagues to address these issues as soon as possible. Now, here on a local level, I am co-chair of the Steel Caucus, and one of our major economic engines within the region is the steel industry. We have faced, as a region, through the 80s, as I've grown up in Hammond, and people worked in the steel mills and their parents worked in the steel mills, I have seen industrial consolidation. So we have a foreign country, or a foreign entity, looking at purchasing U.S. steel. I find that to be a national security issue to make sure that our interests are protected. We have written letters to the administration to use every tool possible to make sure they examine that on the national security front, because our steel is used if there is a conflict. Armored plate is made right here in Northwest Indiana for our tanks, for our ships, for our planes. That is a national security issue that we must take very seriously. So I want to make sure we examine that as we can, and to protect our workforce. So when we're talking about Nippon Steel, we also have to remember why it is an attractive asset to purchase. Because in the 117th Congress, we and I fought for a strong Buy American provision. So as we are investing in roads and bridges and waterways, we are using American-made melted and poured steel in this nation. So what that means is it was attractive to this foreign company because of the advancements and the investments that we are making in our steel industry. First and foremost, protect the region, protect the steel industry, and national security. And make sure when their negotiations are continuing, that the contracts of union labor for our United Steelworkers, tens of thousands of not only employees but pensioners, are protected. They have the right to collectively bargain. They have the right to pensions. They have the right to make sure that they have preserved what is on that contract. That has been a priority. Through the appropriations, we have invested in the Gary Airport, making sure that the Gary Airport, Gary Chicago International Airport, is an asset to able to receive cargo, and that we continue to build upon that in Northwest Indiana. That took a collaborative effort, making sure that state, local, and federal officials work together to invest in the Gary Airport. Currently, as a beacon of light for business development, UPS is bringing cargo into that airport, creating jobs. That is what our mission is. And so we are going to continue that. We had the honor of bringing Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg to our area, to the Gary Airport, to showcase Gary, Indiana and Northwest Indiana to see what these investments mean to the residents. I am very proud of the fact that we will continue to do that. Then we have the South Shore. My predecessor, Congressman Visklowski, has taught me the value of collaborating in a bipartisan and local and state way. The South Shore double tracking is an example of that. If it hadn't been for the state legislature and the governor, if it hadn't been for the 2 United States senators, if it hadn't been for the mayor and city council and county councils, we would not have the double tracking, which is going to be kicking off or starting off in the very near future. So what does that mean to Michigan City since we are here today? It means private investment. It means that throughout the double tracking area, there is transit-oriented development. Cutting through all of that, that means there are incentives to bring businesses here to create jobs into Michigan City. It is no accident that Michigan City is one of the hottest ticket items of real estate throughout Illinois, throughout the nation. Your economic development individual, his name again? Clarence, was on Crane Magazine, the headline, saying Michigan City is open for business. You have a $300 million investment with Solo. You have other opportunities with the closing of the jail for economic development. Businesses want to come here. We want to create jobs, and that has begun because the double tracking is a tool, is a economic development tool that will shorten the amount of time it takes to get to the largest economy in the Midwest. It will make it more attractive for people to move here along with the lakefront to make sure that we have a viable economy along with showing off our assets. So that is a collaborative effort, making sure that the outcomes of this economic development tool increases the quality of life here in Northwest Indiana. Next, we have a hydrogen hub. In the 117th Congress, we passed the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill allowed for 7 hydrogen hubs across the country. Immediately, we began to compete against the entire nation. Let me repeat that. We began to compete against the entire nation to be able to land a hydrogen hub in the vicinity of BP Refinery in Whiting, Indiana. So what does that mean for all of Northwest Indiana? First, it is again an example of a collaborative effort. The 2 Republican United States senators, Young and Braun, supported it. The 8 other members of Congress supported it. Industry, colleges, universities, workforces, union labor, they all supported it. It was my mission to make sure we were able to deliver on this hydrogen hub, which is a cleaner energy to be able to be produced in BP. It extends the 1,500 people who work at BP, and it also creates over 16,000 jobs, construction jobs, women and men. And I know we have to have an equitable opportunity for all of us to be able to work there, but if you don't bring the jobs in, there's no opportunity at all. So this hydrogen hub, there are people that aren't born yet that could potentially be working there, along with contractors who will be fulfilling that. And the hydrogen will be used for energy. And so the hydrogen will also be used. Our 2 steel mills that burn coal and burn iron ore, we are having carbon capture component. We have to understand that. Cleaner air, cleaner water in our environment. And so our steel mills have experimented with this hydrogen and are going to be a customer of it because it, not only because of the environmental issues, because it makes good business sense. Globally, it makes their steel cleaner and greener, and it makes it more attractive throughout the world if it has a lower carbon output, if it's a greener steel. So it makes it more competitive. Again, why Nippon Steel found U.S. Steel an attractive $14.8 billion asset to purchase 40% over the value in Gary, Indiana, in Northwest Indiana. So it's that project that is transformational in Northwest Indiana. And we were able to deliver upon that. And we also have made other investments such as the Grand Cal, another successful collaboration for our region that clean up the remediation of the Grand Calumet River. And for over 100 years, this 13-mile waterway in the region was used by industry to discharge for their toxic waste. And I remember when I was a child where oil would be visibly bubbling in the Grand Calumet River. And it was local, state, and federal officials that came together to highlight this past year, officials from the APA, that we completed a remediation at Lake George Canal portion, and we now see birds and fish and recreational opportunities along this area. What once was a reason for people and businesses to avoid our region is now an attraction, investment of quality of life. And that's what I tried to seek and do. Also, community-funded projects. Off the top of my head, Paladin, here in Michigan City. We were able to secure and return hard-earned tax dollars to Paladin to be able to take care of people with developmental disabilities and to be able to support families. Police departments. I believe that our police and our community should be secure, safe, and resilient. So we have consistently worked with agencies, which we have a community-funded project with Michigan City for their police department for license plate readers. License plate readers are the technology that are the eyes and ears, well, the eyes, in the area that are able to help police departments make our community safe, secure, and resilient. So why is that important? Because all of labor force since COVID is down. The police department needs people, the fire department needs people, Industry X needs people, but how we are able to overcome that and support our law enforcement agencies is to be able to invest in technology and bring that home. Michigan City will be a little safer because of that. An example, in Gary, Indiana, we were able to secure a license plate reader in Gary, Indiana. There was a road rage shooting on 8094. This was from the police chief who called me. It's about a year old now. The license plate reader was able to pick up on the person who shot at the other individual. The police department was able to track them down within 2 hours and make an arrest. That is being the eyes and using technology to make the community safer. The mayor has made that request along with the city council in order to make that difference. And in 2024, why I bring up how important it is, how vitally important it is to secure and to pass our appropriation bills, because all those agencies I mentioned, they're also community-funded projects in order to secure our safety and for the quality of life. Federale?
Oh, the Federer's Alley
Yeah,
project,
Washington Park.
Destination Playground.
He's very proud of it. Councilman has advocated for that for 4 years. It is on our project list that we are advocating for it. It's for seniors to have a walking trail. It's for individuals who need access and disabilities to be able to have a quality of life on Lake Michigan. We are fighting, working arm in arm with the council and the mayor to deliver those tax dollars so it can be productive, and the credit goes to the councilman, and we ride off in the sunset. But what's at the end of that is a better quality of life for Michigan City. Another asset at the lakefront. Bringing people in, showing people they care, who maybe think they were lost or left behind and that they didn't matter. And so I'm fighting for that each and every day. And so I also think that it's vitally important to be able to talk about something that's affecting the Michigan City area, and that's the Coast Guard and what is going on with that. I want to address that firsthand. First and foremost, it is not only a Michigan City issue, it is a national issue. And why that is because there is a reduction in enlistment for the Coast Guard. Again, labor issues, not finding employees, there is an enlistment reduction. So that means it is a manpower issue, not a financial issue. I was encouraged to see Representative Yankum from South Bend write a letter to the individual who's in charge. So that's a bipartisan way, saying we have to protect, and we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, our lakefront, because it's an economic asset. Now, what am I doing, right? Because I'm in the business of what have you done for me lately? And it comes around all the time. But ultimately, what have I done? What I have done is I made sure that not only are we advocating for that, but forward thinking, we're going to ask the mayor and the city council to help us put together an enlistment fair so that the armed services, so that our students know what's available. People don't know what they don't know. If people are enlisting in the Coast Guard, let's show them what the Coast Guard has to offer as far as educational opportunity, along with the other military services. So then we go to the next level of what we're doing. So I was able to reach out to Salute Carbajal, who is ranking member on transportation and infrastructure for the Coast Guard and for maritime. He's a roommate of mine. And he made it perfectly clear that it is not a Michigan City funding issue. It is a national issue with the amount of people who are in the Coast Guard for coverage. But here locally, I give you my word that I'm going to work to make sure, because what we have to think about, and it's going to inevitably happen, there are emergencies on the lakefront. And you want to eliminate time that it takes for emergency first responders to get there. Those calls go into the county responds, then the Coast Guard will have to come here. We will do everything we can to work with the individual, my co-worker, my friend, who is on the committee of jurisdiction who sees the funding into the Coast Guard, to make sure that we are a priority. And I will proactively do what we can for enlistments. That's a Michigan City issue that I'm going to take up and work arm in arm with the mayor to try and find a solution, as many other cities and lakefront communities are facing. So with that, I thank you all very much, and I look forward to the questions, and I look forward to a good give and take and a dialogue. Thank you so much. The first question is, will you support our application for the federal DOT RAISE grant due February 28th for a massive infrastructure road project? Yes. Yes, I will. Why are both parties allowing millions of illegals in our country? What are you currently doing to curb well, we'll stop there. Why are, again, I'll rephrase the question. Why are both parties allowing millions of illegals in our country? So first, I consistently believe that I will use the term migrants and go forward. Ultimately, what we have to do is, where I stand, is our border must be secure. And it must be secure because it's a national security issue. I'm going to expand. I'm glad you said that. So, your name?
Warner Graff.
Warner Graff said do it. I want to do it right now. The United States Senate has a bipartisan deal that worked with the administration to increase border security that is going on right now in current time. Current time. So I believe that we have to have more agents, we have to have more attorneys to get people through the court, and we have to do it in a strong, secure, humane way to secure our border. So when we talk about immigration, so we're talking about bad people coming over who we don't know. And if you want to have a secure nation, you need to know who those individuals are. Other topics of conversation are fentanyl that are coming over the border. So I was a township trustee for 15 years. I'm going to use a sliver, just a sliver of my experiences. My last month in December, there were 23 deaths of overdoses. I sat at the table of people who came into my office and said, I can't afford for this unexpected death. Please help me. because of drug overdoses. And if you get a bad deal of opiate or heroin in a community, it wipes out a big group of people because they don't know the difference. So I have witnessed firsthand and gone to the funerals of individuals who have been impacted by this. So I agree, we need to secure our ports of entry, not just the border where people are coming in, because it is a two-sided issue. The ports of entry are the ports that are in California, that are in Canada, that are here on Lake Michigan. You have to secure that and make sure you have the personnel to be able to do that. I am for the bipartisan funding that will go through in the Senate that will do that. I have voted for funding to make sure that we increase border security and use technology. Now I'm open to, well, you build a wall. I don't think a wall is the answer. I think technology on the border will allow us to be able to do that. And again, I reiterate, not a catchphrase, but what I mean sincerely. Secure, strong, and in a humane way. I am not for putting children in cages and separating them from families. What I am for is making sure that we are moving forward, and this I take exception to. Do it now. I agree. Do it now. I can't agree with you more. The Senate has a bipartisan, Democrat and Republican deal being made that's coming over to the House. The majority,
It was taken off the table.
the majority said, clearly, the majority said one thing. We're going to wait till after the election.
Congressman,
That is a quote.
Is this where you want dialogue by any chance?
No, we'll wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Because
We'll wait.
this is the point where we should have a dialogue, because what you're saying is different than what a lot of us understand is happening.
Right. Well, let me finish, and then we'll have a dialogue. So ultimately, the majority said, wait till after the election. So you have admittedly said, in a bipartisan way, you have bad people coming over, you have drugs coming over, and we need to have a secure border. I agree with you, and I want to do that. So I'm happy to have a dialogue with you. And your first name again?
Warner.
Warner.
So, sir, I believe you're sincere. I think a lot of folks in Washington are sincere. But what you're saying is demonstrably false in terms of that you can't do it. You guys are actively taking down razor wire in Texas. The people that you want to fund are people to process people through. They're not to stop them. Instead of managing our immigration through the laws that are currently on the books, you're facilitating illegal immigration. You won't even call them illegal standing up there. We had 120 times the population of Michigan City, Indiana, come across our border under your watch so far.
Under my watch.
Yeah, and that shouldn't happen. You should be worried about the people in this room and this region, and not worried about all the other things that you're just talking about, right? Because we have to have a secure border, because I'll tell you what's going to happen, right? You're talking about Ukraine, you want to send money to Ukraine, you're talking about the wars around. The minute somebody snaps their finger and they've entered already 100,000 military-aged men into the United States of America through that open border, and they start bombing things like stadiums and police stations, that's going to be on you. It's not going to be on both parties and everything else, because you are in there and it's your party majority that are stopping this thing.
No, our party's not in the majority.
We had the last president trying to
Our
put-
party's not in the majority.
In terms of the majority of folks that want the open border, it's the
Okay.
Democrats. And our last president tried to stop it, and you guys fought him, and now you're fighting it again. Just shut the border down, please. I mean, before anybody gets hurt, really.
I can't reiterate enough, and the dialogue go back and forth. I'm ready to do something right now.
Yeah, that's what we want.
What are you currently doing to curb the frequent chemical releases in violation of the Clean Air Act by BP Whiting plant? More needs to be done. These frequent releases causes backups to the first responders, and there is never adequate communication to the locals. BP.
Not my question, sorry.
Okay.
I'm terrible handwriting.
And then there's a second question alluding to that. So ultimately, first and foremost, clean air, clean water is a mission of what I believe in. I talked about that with the carbon capture component. There are examples where we have written letters to the EPA specifically when there was chemical releases or toxic releases into Lake Michigan. Our asset as far as the Indiana Dunes is something that I want to make sure we protect. So first and foremost, what we have done through the American Rescue Plan, it gave more resources to the EPA. Regionally, our EPA did more visits and more inspections than they ever had done. Previously, a lot of these industries were able to self-regulate. I want to step away from that, and our EPA is more importantly getting involved. Specifically the BP and the two leaks that just happened with toxins, we want to make sure that the EPA and the IDEM is working to protect our water, our groundwater, and all of those things, and have the resources to do so. We did that in the American Rescue Plan, we did that in the infrastructure bill, to make sure that the EPA here locally is working. Now, please comment about the importance of the regional economy, which includes Chicagoland and Illinois, Indiana, Illinois, and Indiana, Illinois as partners. So ultimately, I think it, as I mentioned, the double tracking is a viable example of how the two economies work together regionally. The hydrogen hub was a combination of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan working together because of the economic development. I have firsthand relationships with the members of Congress in Illinois, Democrats and Republicans, to make sure we work together and come together as a region when it comes to economic development and growth. As I talked to you about, my experience as a township trustee, when people came in, if they were affected by the economy or conditions beyond their control, then we would have to find them resources to get through it. My mission, and why I am a member of Congress and ran for it, is to make sure we create an opportunity with economic development and job growth that is equitable, and that we continue to do that. And I will work with, as I mentioned, state, local, Republican, Democrats to do whatever I can to make sure that we are bringing our economy to where it needs to go so people can work, live, and have a quality of life. Why don't you, Congress, address major issues facing the nation? Nothing gets done in DC. Why? Well, some of that is politics, if we want to talk about it. But as I have consistently talked about, I can give examples of bipartisan ways that have impacted our economy and how we have gotten things done. Senator Young, Republican member of the Senate, championed a CHIPS and Science Act. I co-sponsored that piece of legislation. Why that's important to our area is because we have to go back in time, not that far, but back in time. We had disruptions in our supply chain. Those disruptions in our supply chain caused our economy to fail, or to not fail, but to have a gap. And so when we had the supply chain disruption, I'm going to give you an example quickly. Ford plant in Chicago, they make automobiles. If we remember, all the automobiles that were stacked up because they didn't have the chips or semiconductors in order to get out into the market. So then steel industry started slowing up. Our steel workers, because they were unable to make the automobiles because of our disruption and reliance upon foreign countries to supply us with chips and semiconductors. So I voted for that, advocated for it. It became a piece of legislation. What does that mean to Northwest Indiana? At Purdue University, where some of our children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews go to school, there is a plant, Skywalker, that produces semiconductors and chips. So our students are able to have the STEM education to be able to produce this next level of technology that goes into our military devices, that goes into technology, that goes into cars, automobiles, computers, cell phones, and we're doing that domestically. And so that is an example of Washington, D.C. functioning and being able to produce a product that creates jobs, shortens supply chains, reduces costs, and that's what we're doing every day. I am seeing more of a divide between D.C. government and the states. Are we headed towards a civil war? So and I'm just going to talk from the heart, and I don't mention this very often. In a realistic term, I do my best in my rhetoric and in my actions to bring people together. So I do not want to get into the details, but I do want to mention my third day on the job was January 6th. I use that as an example of firsthand witnessing the division in our country. Firsthand, being on the floor. And on that day, when we were, and this goes to the last question, when we had gone to the secure location, the first thing that we did collectively as members of Congress is the chaplain led us in prayer. Because faith is where you go when you have uncertainty. And so we were united at that time. And so I took away from that experience, very humbly and authentically, that what brings us together is making sure people aren't left behind. Making sure that we aren't in discourse or in opportunity or in education or in jobs, that people aren't left behind. So when I talk about the importance of jobs, I mean it. And when I conduct myself anywhere, I do my very best to tamp down the rhetoric that divides us and to stay clear of it. Because we are stronger together than we are divided. And easy to say, but hard to do. We can disagree on policy, and we can disagree and have an understanding of that, but you have to have respect. And I humbly, I get that from my father. He was a 40-year legislator in Indiana as a Democrat, and he got things done. And he walked around and said three things: dignity, dignity, dignity. And he instilled that in me, to try and show grace and have dignity and have respect for the office that you hold and for individuals that you represent.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Let me get through these two cards and then I'll get to you. Medicare, Social Security are going to run out of funds in the next decade. Why isn't there a bipartisan effort to fix it? Consistently, I have been on a piece of legislation for Social Security for its sustainment. And ultimately, I think it's 2034 or 2037. Those are the dates. And why that's important is because, so you know how a member of Congress thinks, when they talk about other pieces of legislation that will impact Social Security, you have to figure out where's that money coming from, right? So a promise made and a promise kept. Social Security is something we all have invested in and we should ensure, and also with Medicare. So I will consistently do everything I can to sign on pieces of legislation that protect Social Security. Just recently, there was an increase of 8.7% to Social Security. When you take away the Medicare adjustment, it was 3.9% for the cost of living. We haven't seen that in many years. So there has been an increase in Social Security. I have my concern. I operate every single day making sure that I sign on to pieces of legislation that protects and advances and prolongs Social Security. And I'm 55, I'm going to be there in 10 years, so on a personal level I want to make sure that I have something right. And the very last question is, thank you for expediting my passport last year. I had given up hope until I contacted your office, Ms. Thomas. So that I bring that up as the last question because it's important for you to understand that. Very humbly, my staff who's here today, if you can raise your hand, there's Greg, who's the manager of our casework. Here's what you need to know about being a member of Congress. It is the foundation of what you do. And as a township trustee, we did casework of about 3,500 cases a year. That matches in Congress what you do as far as cases. So Social Security, passports, veteran benefits, all of those things come to our office and we navigate through the system in order to be able to provide for individuals, to be able to assist them. That is something that the staff does each and every day. So as you go back into the communities, understand, if someone has a problem with the IRS, or if a veteran isn't getting the benefits necessary, or if you need help with a federal agency, you can contact our office and we have staff that assist. The passport is one issue, but we handle many issues, and we will continue to do so. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So my question was, okay, you just mentioned,
Your name?
Tim,
Tim?
you just mentioned the opening prayer in Congress, about bringing people together.
Yes.
I think every Congress opens that way, but this is the first time I remember when the fellow said, when he closed his prayer, he said, "Amen," which that means, so be it. But he said, "Amen," and a woman. DC is an absolute clown show right now. And I was there on January 6th. I don't know who else in this room was there on January 6th, but I was there. And I saw what happened. I have video on my phone of millions of people who were there to protest peacefully. And Trump said, let's march peacefully and patriotically. And I didn't see it personally, but there was the FBI, Antifa, all these people wearing Trump hats. Ray Epps, an informant for the FBI, said the day before, let's go into the Capitol. Ray Epps, how come he hasn't been dealt with? DC is an absolute clown show. And we need to release the J6 hostages.
Two things. And your name again? Tim. One, I take my job very seriously. I talked about a lot of things that we've accomplished. The staff that I'm here with take it very seriously. I work with a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, who take their job very seriously, who've worked together in a bipartisan way to make our nation a better place. Two, I fundamentally disagree with you with your views on that. Yes, sir.
How you doing, Mr. Mrvan? I have a question. I'm a veteran, served this country proudly. We don't have a VA outreach center in LaPorte County.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our veterans, they have to go to Maryville or South Bend. And I'll tell you, dealing with that is very trying. It's very, it frustrates me. Even during the last winter storm, if you had appointments on those days, you have to be seen for another 40 days. They had to reschedule some of my appointments because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you could do it, you're a Veterans Affairs guy. Have you ever took a study to see if we could open up like a veteran outreach center in Michigan City?
So, one, thank you for your service. I greatly appreciate that. And so I don't say that lightly. As a member of Congress, I serve on Veteran Affairs. I'm ranking member of Oversight and Investigation. I have passed 4 pieces of legislation that have increased the benefits for veterans. I co-sponsored the Veteran Honor the Pact Act, which we didn't talk about today, but I'm going to mention and go back to your original statement. But the Honor the Pact Act allowed for medical coverage of people who had exposures to toxic burn pits. 60,000 veterans in Indiana have taken advantage of that. So what that means is also it expands back to even Vietnam and Agent Orange and other medical coverages and other conflicts that we have had. And so people's service-connected disabilities and the ability to receive health care as a veteran was greatly increased and greatly more beneficial by the passing of the Honor the Pact Act. So not only did we pass the Honor the Pact Act, but we passed the funding for it, which is equally important. So that was something that I worked on Veteran Affairs. That's something that I had committed to. So now access, right? Access is so vitally important. There was a study done. And unfortunately, the study looked at closing and consolidating, then adding. Just being honest. But what I will do here in front of everyone, tell you is that I will commit to looking into what will it take to be able to have a facility here in LaPorte County. The second thing that exists is the Mission Act. The Mission Act within 60 miles, right? Or circumstances, and we can help you, guide you through this. So if you're seeing a specialist, a cardiologist, an oncologist, or someone else, then you have to see them and you have to wait 40 days. That is a condition of the Mission Act. The VA can use a private provider to be able to fulfill that. So there are options. Now, it's not the easiest path to navigate through,
It's not.
and I'm letting you know that, and I understand and know the frustration. But to simplify things and to be able to have access to health care and mental health is one of the reasons why I am in Congress. And so we will continue, I will take that back and do my very best. You know, if I had my way, there would be a VA clinic in every community I represent in Northwest Indiana. But unfortunately, it is a matter of resources, and you don't want to hear that, and I don't want to say it, but we can do what we can to join forces and to work towards that and to find solutions to that issue so people, so veterans, men and women, who served our nation don't have to wait 40 days to go see a specialist or to reschedule an appointment.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Councilman Mrvan, as far as being the president of the Michigan City Council, and I'm Councilman Don Frisbolinski, I just want to personally thank you, and the council wants to thank you for the federal money that we got, the American Rescue Plan money. Michigan City received $16 million from the federal government 3 years ago, I believe it was, when we got that money. Yeah, and I believe the school system, the Michigan City area schools, received somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million. So that came from the federal government. So I know the federal government is not perfect, and we all know that. But I want to sincerely thank you for the $16 million, because with that, we were able to buy emergency equipment, fire, police, equipment for the city, and many other, and even money was supplied for the playground that I'm trying to get, not myself, but the city's trying to get constructed in Federer's Alley. So I wanted to bring it up a number of times, not so much to you, but since you're here today, but bring it up at a council meeting, just to let people know. So I want to thank you personally.
Thank you.
For doing that.
Undoubtedly, it's through the collaboration and the effort with the local community and the local elected officials and the council and the mayor to be able to do that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Susan Thomas with Just Transition Northwest Indiana. Regarding the hydrogen hubs, as it stands scientifically and technologically right now, hydrogen is going to take massive amounts of water to produce. And until green hydrogen is perfected, even that component is going to take massive billions of dollars of water to produce. So, of course, we've got the hydrogen hub here right on the shores of Lake Michigan. We have a water scarcity issue, as you know, globally, nationally, and in Indiana. What can we do to get folks to, in your position, to understand the science behind the water requirements, that if we're not looking at that, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul for a false solution. So how can we help you to read the reports showing the massive amounts of water that this is going to take, really making it a false solution?
So I'm open to the dialogue and the term false solution because, as I mentioned, I believe in the creation of jobs. And I would gladly sit down with the organization, as my chief of staff, I believe, did on 2 occasions, and talk about the difference between green hydrogen and blue hydrogen and what it means to our community. This hydrogen hub is something that I believe in, I've advocated for, I voted for, and want to see it come to fruition because of the opportunity that it presents as far as transformational employment and greener energy. And so I will continue to always have an open door policy in my office to be able to listen, understand, and absorb the difference between blue and green hydrogen and what it's going to take with those investments. But what I will say, humbly, is not only are we investing through the government $1 billion, but BP, an international company, is investing close to $5 to $7 billion. Now, environmentally, they are not. We just talked about what had happened. But what I mean by that is the private market does everything they can to do that research also to make sure. Now, when we talk about that it is a viable option. So when we talk about water scarcity, that's something that I need to learn about, being on the biggest fresh lake in the country. I want to make sure that I learn everything that I can on what that means and what it will mean for the future. Yes, Representative.
I just was wondering if you are familiar with HR 4052, the National Infrastructure Bank, and if you could talk about that at all?
So, the HR, what's the number?
4052.
And it is, go ahead and explain it. We've talked about
National
it.
Infrastructure Bank.
Right.
That's going to be kind of like the New Deal or the Hamilton Bank, and take a $5 trillion bank to loan to different places to do infrastructure rather than putting on the tax base from the federal government.
To be honest, I have to look into that and be a little bit more, but I can make sure that we write something up and or I can communicate that to you.
Please.
Are you advocating for it or are you against it?
I'm actually introducing a concurrent resolution to support it, to send to the House of Representatives, but it's not done yet. But
we're working together with the same goal.
Yes.
Right? The goal is to make sure local governments have the ability to have infrastructure investments so that they can create economic development, roads, streets, bridges, sewers, all of those things. I also failed to mention something with infrastructure as far as deliverables, because you are, as I mentioned, valued at what you deliver. For 8094 from 65 to the state line, we were able to secure $130 million, which is the federal match, to make 8094 safer, make the ramp safer, to create an extra lane that would be car-only lane, and to be able to make sure we spend less time stuck in traffic on 8094. And so that is something I also am very proud of. That was just announced by the Department of Transportation probably within the last 60 days. It will also mean if you're on the highway less time, you're emitting less carbon, gives us cleaner air, cleaner water, and works towards our environment. Yes, Mayor?
So, I have a question about support for smaller cities and communities. So, last week while in DC, they were talking about all the wonderful money they have for us and all the opportunities they have for us, but even while in DC in all those sessions, it was the larger cities getting a bulk of everything. And I need to know, what can you do to provide us technical support to get those funding sources? Myself and this one is yours.
Oh.
Myself and Chief Corley and some other folks are going to be there next week on mental health issues. We'll be coming to your office, but we see all the money. But I'm trying to figure out, from a leadership standpoint, how do you connect me to the right people to help me get the money to bring it back?
Crystal clear. And what I love about Mayor Angie is literally that was the very first conversation I had with her 3 years ago. She's consistently advocating for what can I deliver for my district or for the community of Michigan City. She is. That literally was the first conversation we had. So ultimately, what you're saying is, how do you get your fair share, and how can I be a facilitator to make sure that that happens? We've talked about different examples. First, it's eligibility for grants. So you have to respectfully do your due diligence to be eligible for those dollars. Once you identify them, then my staff will absolutely work and help guide you down that path. Liz has been with Congressman Visklowski and with me. Mark has been with us also. And we want to do it. It is a symbiotic relationship. If we could land hard-earned tax dollars back into Michigan City and help your community, and be able to come back next year and do this and talk about the success that we had. So I give you full access to my office. It starts with the eligibility for what those types of grants are. Michigan City's one of the, as I mentioned, one of the hottest real estate cities in the country. We have a tremendous amount of opportunity here. We're spurred not only by the lakefront, the beauty, the clean air, the clean water. We are also spurred by a great business district. We are spurred by the investments that I have talked about. And we are attractive because of economic development investment in the double tracking. And so, of course, my staff will move mountains, walk arm in arm, do whatever we can to make sure that your eligible applications get into the right area, right hands. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Tommy Polavic, 1316 Ohio Street. Just want to say, you're talking a lot about economic development and the Gary Chicago Airport bringing jobs. I know there was something they talked about 30 years ago, and I think, it's actually in our comprehensive plan. I think it would be a major game changer if we had a third I-94 interchange at County Line Road. There's all kinds of open land out there that's just prime for development, and we just need the, semi to have access to that. And I think that'd be a great hub, get people who are on the west side, and that's somewhere I think you were surely trying to push for.
It is something we will take under advisement. I know over the last 10 years that was something that was going on, and then it took Illinois and Indiana to work together. Governors didn't see eye to eye, but we can absolutely take a look at that. Anything that relieves congestion on our major artery is a good thing. Yes, sir.
Yesterday, 25 states joined with Texas to go against the government on securing the border. And that's what I'm talking about when this is the beginning of the Civil War. Because Greg Abbott is fighting, he's locked horns with our president, and it looks like it's not going to get resolved. So here comes 25 states to join now with Texas against Washington, D.C., basically.
Again, I'm going to do everything I can to vote, as I talked about, with urgency, so we could secure our borders in a strong, secure, humane way. And I hope to make that vote, and not hope, but will take action. And my rhetoric will back that up, and my actions to do that. Again, trying to unite, not divide. Those 25 states have every right to do what they want to do. And humbly, what I will tell you is the immigration issue has not just begun. The immigration issue has gone on, if you want to have an honest dialogue, for a decade. And unfortunately, we have not found a solution. I believe we have a tremendous opportunity to be able to find that solution here in this session. And I'm here standing before you telling you something's put before me, I'm going to take action and support it.
Thank you. Time for one more question.
Yes.
Congressman Mrvan, Nancy Moldenhauer from Michigan City. And I'm going to ask if it's possible for you to introduce a congressional act that would establish the Calumet National Heritage Area. And this would actually join together the Pullman National Historic Park with the Indiana Dunes National Park. And this would create more people coming from Illinois to Indiana. We have more people coming this way, more tourists, more visitors. This is going to have an extremely positive impact on small businesses and also increase the economy and the money that's spent in this area. So I'm humbly asking you to please consider this as a possibility.
We will consider it. And Gary talks to us. I just saw Gary just recently, and he talked to us about this from the Miller area, and he has advocated, yes, he has advocated. Julie's with us. Ms. Brown, how are you? And ultimately, we will take a look at it. It is in conjunction with the Illinois delegation that we are working with Robin Kelly, because there is the portion of it that comes from the Illinois side. So it is a matter of working out who sponsors it. I have consistently said if she puts that forward, that we would be able to support that.
I think it's important because when I travel places around the country, I will go through that whole area and visit places along the way. So I know that it does help visitors to our area also, so thank you.
So, thank you. And just in closing, I want to thank the mayor and the city of Michigan City for allowing us. I want to thank all of you for being here and showing up. As I mentioned from the very beginning, it is about having an honest dialogue, respectful conversation that makes us stronger, better a member of Congress, and also has connectivity when we are here in the district. So I thank you all very much. And if you need anything from my office, the staff is still here. They can give you a card. And please utilize us when it comes to casework. Thank you very much.